Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Mike's MMA Picks here with your Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown show brought to you by BetDSI as well as MMA Oddsbreaker. We are here for UFC Vegas 46, where we have Chookagian-Maia taking on Calvin Kattar. 145 pounds, big fight, 5 rounds, 10 fights on the docket, 5 of which are expected to finish. I'm expecting more than that. Can't wait. Salivating. Ready for this. Are you? That is the question. Let's get right to it. First fight of the night, where we have TJ Brown coming in as a minus 220 favorite, was supposed to take on Gabriel Benitez. That didn't pan out. In this spot, he's taking on Charles Rosa, who is taking the fight on extremely short notice here. TJ Brown, excellent wrestling, can get finished. Charles Rosa does not have great wrestling, especially defensive wrestling. We've seen him ragdolled by Bryce Mitchell, Derek Minner, a few other fighters. And this spot, Rosa, stand up, not really much of a power threat on the feet. TJ Brown has a tendency to gas out. Something to mention here also is that James Krause is going to be cornering a number of fighters on this card. It almost seems like it's a Glory MMA card. I'm going to lean and pick TJ Brown in this spot. I think that he's going to come in with more gas. He is the heavier hitter. Granted, he could end up getting caught in a submission, being overzealous. That's one thing about TJ Brown that we've seen in the past. He will go for it. He is a guy who has a tendency to go submission over position. And when you're risking your hard-earned money, that is something to be aware of. So proceed with caution. 155 pounds. The fight against Gabriel Benitez was supposed to take place at 145 pounds. So maybe there's a little extra gas in the tank for TJ Brown. I'll be picking TJ Brown in that spot. Next up, where we have another short notice replacement, Kelleher-Croom, coming in as a plus 235 underdog. By the way, previous matchup that we were just speaking about, TJ Brown, you watch the DraftKings prices. TJ Brown is one of those values on the card. Look at his pricing. Big value there. Also, another spot here, Brian Kelleher as a minus 300 favorite. Check out his DraftKings price in the 7,000s. Kelleher-Croom, though, James Krause fighter, coming in plus 235. A guy who's traditionally fought at 145 pounds, has also taken fights up at 155 pounds. Facing Brian Kelleher, who put in a full camp. We know Brian Kelleher is a seasoned veteran of the sport. Both of these fighters are. Over 30 professional bouts to their record. Brian Kelleher, minus 300 betting favorite. Now, Brian Kelleher should have the better wrestling here. He's going to be at a major size disadvantage. Brian Kelleher typically fights at 135 pounds, but we've seen him take on Ricky Simon up at 145 pounds. He's also fought Hunter Azar at 145 pounds. Kelleher, I don't see the size being too much of a factor here. Kelleher, a intelligent fighter who appears to be flourishing over time. Now, you look at potential outcomes. Yes, I could see Kelleher coming out here and getting caught in something. I was at a fight where he took on Chito Vera, got caught very early in that spot. Kelleher-Croom, though, you watch his fights. His nickname is Crash, and it is for a reason. The guy commits to everything, and if there wasn't an opponent standing in front of him, I would believe he'd crash right into the other side of the octagon. It's just his style of fighting. Was not able to take Alex Caceres down. Oh, by the way, friends, look what we got here. Interruption. Big Pretty sighting. Big Pretty's in the house. All right. Let's get back to this breakdown. So Brian Kelleher, I think he's going to force Kelleher-Croom to make mistakes. He's going to be the stronger, more physical fighter, the fighter who's able to have better cardio in this spot, have heavier power, and I'll be picking Brian Kelleher to win in this spot. Kelleher-Croom, though, short notice replacement. We saw what he was able to do to Roosevelt Roberts. So there's always potential that that ends up happening again. But I think that the probability of that outcome is very low. And if you were asking me to cap this fight, I would have Brian Kelleher at about 70 to 72%. So cheers. Let's continue on this journey. Let's take a look at the chat here. Let's eat, Lewis. Get ready. Evan, good morning. First event of the year. You want to get off on the right foot, pick your spots. Let's cash some tickets. Yes, good point. James Krause is going to be all over the place tonight. Great coach. Great coach. All right. Croom is kill or be killed. I see some love here for Big Pretty, Georgia, with that fascinating win. We also have Nick saying that Kelleher going for that bonus money. I do see that as as something that he shoots for. He's Mr. Bonus. All right. Next up, we have Ramiz Brahimaj taking on Kattar-Chikadze. Kattar-Chikadze getting up there in age. Very durable fighter. As we well know, the guy has been through hell and back, been on the brink, life and death many times. Brahimaj, excellent ground game. Starts strong, though we haven't seen how he's performed deep in fights other than having his ear get basically severed off while he was getting boxed apart. Kattar-Chikadze, tough guy to finish. Brahimaj, Fortis MMA fighter. This fight, let's see. It's expected to go to a decision at -160. I do see this fight going the distance. Brahimaj, this is one of those things I talked about on a podcast yesterday with Z's MMA and a few other guest gamblers, that you're putting your faith into a fighter implementing a game plan. We've seen Brahimaj come out and not fight to his strengths. He fought a stand-up fight against the Palatnikov fight, granted, yes, he fought to his strengths in that fight, but his UFC debut, that was a different story. So do you trust Brahimaj to get this fight to the mat and then overwhelm McGee? Tough task here. I'll be picking the underdog. Well, -105 now, Kattar-Chikadze. Brahimaj at one point was plus money. I understand the narrative that Brahimaj is the younger fighter, that he has more in the tank, and that he could capitalize on an older Kattar-Chikadze, but Kattar-Chikadze is so battle tested. He still looks sharp in there at times. I'll be picking Kattar-Chikadze. Next up, where we have the debut of Joseph Holmes, -155 betting favorite, taking on Jamie Pickett. Jamie Pickett, great athlete. The Staropoli victory, impressive there. Though the lack of head movement for Jamie Pickett is a concern. You watch the fight against Beverly Hills Ninja. There have been others. The Chookagian fight. He's in many fights. Granted, he got blown out of the water by Beverly Hills Ninja. But Pickett has a gas tank. He's tough, but he gets short-circuited often and puts himself in bad situations. Joseph Holmes reminds me of Jalen Turner, the way he fights, has a ground game. Very, very long. Both of these guys, extremely long reaches. The more fluid fighter, though, is Jamie Pickett. I believe Jamie Pickett's got more gas in the tank. He's familiar with being inside of that smaller octagon. We've seen him on Dana White's Contender Series a number of times. Joseph Holmes has a dangerous ground game and could potentially lock up a submission here if Jamie Pickett doesn't mind his P's and Q's. Dangerous spot, low-level MMA fight. I think this fight could be lined in a more closely lined fashion, closer to a pick'em, to be honest. I'll be leaning with the underdog here. I think that the experience of Jamie Pickett alone and his skill set keeps him in this fight. Though don't be surprised if Joseph Holmes ends up putting Pickett in a bad spot, grapevining him and having a submission victory. So I'll be picking Pickett, though, in this spot. No certainties in this game, though. Next up, wow, we have a banger of a matchup between Joe Anderson, Brito, and Bill Algeo. Bill Algeo is a extremely confident fighter, plus 110 underdog. We've seen him. One thing I have to say about Bill Algeo is he is a survivor out there. He's somebody who Spike Carlisle put him in some really bad spots, and he is grimy and long and lanky, and he just finds a way of surviving. And another thing is Bill Algeo has a tremendous amount of swagger. This is someone who, against Ricardo Lamas, showed his mettle there. Brito is a banger. This guy commits to his strikes 100%. The shooting box style, huge fan of that. Go for broke mentality. He breaks his opponents, and he's going to attempt to do that with Algeo here. Brito looked phenomenal on the scales. Minus 140 favorite. There's the potential for Brito gassing out here in this spot. I think that his power could overwhelm Algeo. You watch the Ricardo Ramos fight against Bill Algeo, and the takedowns were there all day. They could potentially be there again. It's just, does Brito have the finishing ability in this spot? Yes, he does. I'd rather play Brito inside the distance than him straight. I think Algeo is than the money line. Algeo is a survivor in this. That's one thing that makes him who he is. But I'm tempted, as you can tell, I'm tempted to think that Brito, after watching the tape, can find a way to lock something up here. So I don't see this one going the distance. I'll be picking Brito to win. And one thing I love about Brito's fighting style is he empties the tank. You want somebody who's going to fight hard for your money, and he's a fighter who does that. So give me Joe Anderson, Brito. Let's check the chat here. Excellent, excellent. Will the main event go past 2.5 rounds? That is a really good question. We're going to break that. We're going to break that fight down in a few minutes. Maria, have some faith here. Let's continue this journey where we have Dakota Bush taking on Vyacheslav Borshev. Borshev, I highly recommend you take a look at some of his kickboxing matches on YouTube. They're there to be found. Incredible kickboxer who is willing to go out on his shield. We haven't seen him finished via strikes in MMA. Borshev rolling thunder inside of the octagon during his Contender Series bout. This guy will go for broke. Started MMA training, started wrestling in 2017, has been fighting since 9 years of age, is a striker, tough as nails. We saw some of his get-up game in a previous matchup, and he's taking on Dakota Bush, who's sitting at a plus 150 underdog. Dakota Bush's path to victory is going to be his wrestling here. I don't think he has the ability to compete striking. He's going to have to commit to closing distance. It's a dangerous game to play. The odds have been closing here. Now, Broshchev is a minus 180 favorite. This fight isn't expected to go to a decision. There's a concern if Broshchev gets taken down, he's going to get stuck there for extended periods of time. And I see that being a real issue here. Though Bush is going to have to close distance in an effective manner. This fight, let's look at these odds here. The fight doesn't go the distance, is sitting at minus 175. I think that's an accurate line. I think it actually could be up to minus 200 or so. This is a fight I would keep an eye on from a DraftKings perspective. Broshchev is going to be landing strikes as long as the fight's standing. If this fight hits the mat, it's going to change dramatically. So you'd want to pick one side of the fight here, and I would create multiple lineups because both of these fighters have the potential to score extremely high as far as the DraftKings score goes. So give me Broshchev here inside of the smaller octagon. All eyes on him. First fight card of the year. A lot of folks are going to be tuning in, and this is going to be a marquee matchup on the card. Next up, where we have the rematch that no one asked for. Who asked for this rematch? Tell me. Chookagian coming in as a almost minus 200 favorite against Jennifer Maia, plus 155 underdog. You watch the tape on this fight and you wonder what could potentially change between the outcome of the first fight and this fight. Both fighters have not really changed their style up much, though. Maia was able to have some success against Valentina Shevchenko at some point in their fight. And there's glaring holes in Chookagian's get-up game. When she gets taken down, she gets stuck on bottom. Maia, if I was in her camp, I would have spent the entire camp working on closing distance and committing to the takedown. We know that although Chookagian has a solid ground game, look at her takedown defense. One of the best things about Chookagian's game, she has two, right? Her grunts that have an effect on the judging. And the second is her footwork. Cynthia Calvillo was unable to close distance on her. Jessica Andrade is just a powerhouse and managed to do that, managed to close distance and put her out. Jennifer Maia, it's not like Chookagian is an invincible fighter. I understand if you're an MMA handicapper and you see paths to victory. Chookagian, you've already seen this fight once, so this is the second iteration of the matchup. But part of me, I'm pulling for Jennifer Maia in this matchup. I think that knowing the tendencies of Chookagian, knowing exactly what she's going to do, she's going to have to attempt to close this. I think that's this point, Maia at plus 155 is moving into a number where the odds of probability of her winning are a little bit better than the odds suggest. So I'll be picking Maia in this spot. I understand the love for Chookagian, and conventional wisdom would lead many to believe that Chookagian will win this fight, and that may likely happen. I think that Chookagian should be favored here, but when you calculate the odds and potential path to victory, Maia has one, and I'll be picking Jennifer Maia. Next up, where we have my favorite matchup of the night, where we have Brandon Royval versus Rogerio-Bontorin. Royval coming in as a minus 170 betting favorite. Rogerio-Bontorin looked phenomenal on the scales yesterday. Brazilian farmhand strength, black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, heavy hands. Gave Matt Schnell all he could handle. Granted, he came in overweight for a bantamweight matchup. Bontorin also struggled big time against Ray Borg. By the way, Ray Borg's going to be fighting soon against Kobe Gibson. Brandon Royval has been ragdolled in many fights from a strength perspective, from a takedown perspective. But one thing about Brandon Royval is he does not give in. He does not succumb unless he's fighting somebody who like Pantoja or Moreno when his shoulder ended up popping out. We saw the Kai Kara-France fight, how he performed in that matchup. The Tim Elliott fight came back, and Royval is going to have the volume. He's going to have the scrambling. That is where this fight, I believe, is going to be won or lost, is the scrambling ability of Brandon Royval. I think the longer this fight goes, you're going to see Royval really turn up. It's interesting, though. Kudos to John Coe out there, who does a phenomenal job interviewing folks. He had an interview with Brandon Royval, who came in and said that he's going to take a more measured approach. And as Piglord said in the chat recently, weaponized cardio is a real thing, and Royval shouldn't get away from that. So I'm going to be picking Brandon Royval here, and I think that this fight does not go the distance. Next up, we've got Chase Sherman against Jake Collier, co-main event of the evening. This fight surprisingly has sat at plus odds for fight doesn't go the distance. Chase Sherman, you look at the way that he fights, 14 out of his 15 victories have come via knockout. And he's fighting Jake Collier, who's a high volume heavyweight who at one point fought at 185 pounds. If you listen to Jake Collier's media interview, he said recently that he's never going to allow another fight to go the distance. In this spot, Sherman, you watch the Justin Willis fight. The guy just does not move his head, has never really moved his head when he's on his feet, and he's there to be hit. Jake Collier has heavy hands. He's fleet of foot despite being morbidly obese. The body language and optics, I believe, are baked into this current line. That's an issue here. Collier has given in and failed himself in previous fights. The Carlos Felipe fight, that was a fight that he should have won. Let's be real here. He should have taken that victory. Chase Sherman here, he could come out and throw the kitchen sink at Collier and take him out of there. That is a possibility. Could end up Jake Collier folding like a lawn chair at some point during the bout. But full camp, Collier, 264.5 pounds, has the length, has he has the volume, and he has a chin on him too. I question Chase Sherman's chin in this spot, and I'll be picking Jake Collier to win. I also think that this fight doesn't go the distance. So give me Jake Collier in that matchup. Now, we are headed to the main event of the evening for all the marbles, where we have Giga-Chikadze as a minus 220 favorite taking on Calvin Kattar. Many have lined up through the years to fade Giga-Chikadze, and they will have the opportunity to do so one more time. And Calvin Kattar coming in as a plus 180 underdog in this spot. I think the odds are wide here in this matchup. Giga-Chikadze is a phenomenal striker, a phenomenal kickboxer with a karate background who's been doing it since he was basically came out of the womb, and comes out of a great camp taking on Calvin Kattar, who is a boxer, a part of the cartel group who are tough as nails. Calvin Kattar is a survivor. He's someone who took the kitchen sink and some from Max Holloway. Everybody wonders how much that took away from his durability. If we're me lining this fight, I would line this fight around Giga-Chikadze minus 160, minus 180-ish. I think that Calvin Kattar, the longer this fight goes, could potentially become live. The problem I have is Calvin Kattar's guard leads him to be absorbing body shots. That is a real problem in this spot. Also, leg kicks we saw against Renato Moicano. How, I wonder, behind the scenes, what defensive issues, how he's managed to shore up these holes defensively in one camp. I don't think that's possible, but there is a possibility that Calvin Kattar survives an early onslaught and comes back to turn the tide on Giga-Chikadze, who appeared to be fading big time against Edson Barbosa. I know he came on and won that fight, but the optics in that matchup lead me to believe that Giga-Chikadze was fading, and that he has weaknesses of his own, especially when he's being pressured. When if Kattar is able to close the distance, that's something to be aware of. So I don't see this fight going the distance, folks. And I'll be picking Giga-Chikadze, but there isn't much conviction in that pick. You'd be surprised. Giga-Chikadze has won me a lot of money in the past. And Chikadze is he's a smart fighter. He doesn't take huge risks. We know that the ground game is an issue for him, but Calvin Kattar, let's be real, he doesn't have the ground capabilities. At least he hasn't shown them to us inside of the octagon to lock up submissions. He may come out here and shock us all, but I don't think that's a likely outcome. I think that Kattar is live to come back and turn the tide and win this fight, but I'll be picking Giga-Chikadze in this matchup. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. You can find my premium plays at MMA Oddsbreaker Premium, third-party tracked at betmma.tips. Great day for a fight card. We are back, baby. We are ready to rumble. Go get what's yours, your time. Let's do this. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.